All right, it is 11 o'clock. Let us begin. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything, for being all of us, for being this live webinar, for being the process of energy healing, the process of awakening, for being the ancestors and the presence of the ancestors and the role in the manifestation of the body. Thank you for being the link between the unmanifest source of creation and the wholeness of creation. Thank you. Thank you for moving through as our collective in an efficient and concise and powerful and useful way, and for empowering all of us as we're rolling through this webinar together to be proficient and successful and accomplished in using energy work to promote the most useful strokes of intelligence that support life and support evolution to the highest. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Welcome. As people are rolling in here. So what is energy healing? Energy healing is the process. It's an integrative process. It integrates experiences of expansion of consciousness with the physiology. So it supports the ability to bring those abstract, non-material structures of self to the surface and support their manifestation in the denser levels of the physiology. Essentially, bringing unmanifest to the manifest, bringing the unmanifest and the manifest together as one wholeness. And so energy healing is like the glue. And that's done with the use of focused attention, because our attention is consciousness. So when we take our attention, which is consciousness, and we focus it somewhere, that has an effect, that just the falling of the awareness upon anything has an effect upon it. And there's certain laws of nature. There are these simple mechanics by which our awareness enlivens anything upon which it falls. So in energy healing, what we're doing is we're looking and kind of analyzing that process, understanding it in detail. And by understanding it in detail, then we can use attention, folding in on the loops of attention itself, right? Attention upon attention, to enhance and support the ability for our focus of attention to be extremely powerful and extremely useful for the process of integrating consciousness with matter. Consciousness unmanifest with the manifest. So that's energy healing in a nutshell. And the whole reason that we have the word healing in there is because it all sort of evolved out of looking for a skill set or looking for a technology to handle illness. You need to be able to deal with, or problems, not just physical illness, but any types of problems. So when we're looking for a way to more effectively deal with challenges. Okay. We'll talk more about that, of course, in the review. But I wanted to do just one more little finer addressing of a really, really interesting question that came in yesterday, which I addressed mostly, and you all can go back and take a closer look at that in yesterday's recording. But the lady was asking me about the sort of common and popular understanding of what's happening on Earth right now, the awakening that's happening on Earth as a move from 3-dimension to 4-dimension to 5-dimension to multi-dimension. And in addition to that, she was pointing out that in this model of various dimensions, there is this idea that at higher dimensions, higher beings exist, beings with less physical bodies and so forth, and that we, that part of the story is as we move to higher dimensions, we gain access to those higher beings. And then she said it gets complicated. If that wasn't complicated enough. But no, it gets more complicated because there's also a matter of density. And the density axis in these different dimensions is different from the dimensional axis. So yes, and I forgot to address the density issue. So I'd like to do that now. And I really like the density, the point about density, because it ties in so perfectly and so beautifully with the model for energy healing. In the model for energy healing, our bodies, ourselves, exist along a spectrum of density, from physical body being the most dense down to finer levels, you know, mental body, emotional body, well, etheric, mental, emotional, astral, causal, and then being. And in this model that I'm presenting is just 8 levels, basically 2 layers of being down there, unmanifest being, and then causal and astral, making this deeper level of self, eternal self, more of a collective level of self. And then the denser levels up here, more present self, personal self. So if we think of that spectrum of density going up and down, then there's this other spectrum of dimensions that's kind of going this way. And that has to do with, I described it last night in terms of the causal level of the physiology, and how the causal level has this tide that goes from wholeness to the parts. And when the tide goes back and forth from wholeness to the parts are malleable and they can be reset. So when the tide goes out to the wholeness of the causal field, there's this opportunity at that point to bring the experience of that larger total field of awareness in as the tide comes in and identifies regions. And my point from yesterday is that the 3-dimension, 4-dimension, 5-dimension, like that, are a byproduct of how many parts we have when the tide comes in. Because for beings that are existing at a very systemic level of the universe and consciousness very, very expanded, physiologies which are able to accommodate highly expanded consciousness and perception of everything at once, when the tide rolls in, multiples of regions are revealed, multiples of regions, whereas for human beings, for the average over the last so many centuries, the experience is the elements, the 5 dimensions, the 5 spin types, or the 5 structures of creation: earth, air, water, fire, air, and space. And so most people, it's like wholeness, and then, oh yeah, they're the elements, and then wholeness, and these elements. But the elements have a reality all the way from very physical material, very manifest things, solid things, to their very subtle reality. And so that's where the density comes in. We have, for example, we have water, which is something we can drink and taste, but there's also the soul of the water, which has this ability to hold memory. The soul of the water holds memory. And there's a really interesting relationship between water and time, because water's memory capacity is the blueprint by which we organize time. In other words, we organize our experience of time through memory. But water's memory is very, very simple. And so water has laid down the original blueprint, so to say, or the original very simple, fundamental, kind of essential means of holding memories, feelings. Water holds feelings. And this comes into the review of yesterday, which was that the way we categorize time periods is through the feelings associated with them. Like when you were a child, that's a particular feel to when you were a child, and especially based on when you were born. There's the feeling of childhood. There's also the feeling of childhood overlaid across the early 2000s or the the 1990s, the 1980s, the 1970s, 1960s, 1950s, like that. And each of those different eras has its own specific feel. So we remember, we categorize time according to its feel. And this is the same way water categorizes time. And we are made mostly of water. So essentially, a lot of these feels that are associated with the different time periods are contained within us, within the water within us. The time itself is contained within space. The time itself is space. And we talked a lot yesterday about the relationship between space and time. So we won't go too much to that today. Very theoretical stuff. Whew. Anyway, all right. So that was the question about the dimensions. Essentially, my point is that the evolution of an individual, that means accelerating to higher levels of states of consciousness, or the evolution of the collective of individuals, that means our Earth collective evolving from third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, like that. These models are quite linear. And the point that I was trying to offer yesterday, in my humble opinion, is that this progression is not linear, that really it's a very sort of tumultuous, it goes in, it can be experienced in cycles, in waves of cycles, and cycles within cycles within cycles. And the truth is that wholeness, that big level of evolution, is actually present in all the parts. And it's present at all the times, even when the Earth is gripped by events which are not happy. Even then, there's still this element of wholeness present in every part. And one of the big work that we were doing yesterday in the astral field was to help align up our astral bodies and the whole web of life that's around the Earth, so that the whole system is aligned with the vibrations, or the meter or pulse of cosmic evolution. That's important because the meter has gotten a little corrupted over time. So part of our job as an energy healing collective is to wash off the threads of corruption, is to clear or balance or harmonize the cosmic intention for our field with the collective, the whole collective field as it exists right now, with that corruption in there, and leverage that corruption as a means, like a shadow that shows you where the sun is. If the shadow falls in a certain direction, then you know the sun is over there. And that's the whole purpose of that corruption, is the corruption sits in the frequency of sound that's coming in from the cosmos to our Earth. And this is the perfect time to do this too, because we're in the winter time of year. And in the winter time of year, in the northern hemisphere anyway, our Earth is more oriented to the celestial spheres than it is toward the sun. We get more starlight right now than we do sunlight. And the starlight that's the source of all that cosmic metering and all that information that we need. So that we use. All right, so that's a basic review of yesterday. Okay, then at the very end, a couple of questions came in which I wanted to address. It's a very beautiful question. Is the here and now opposite of time, or is it beyond time? And my experience is the here and now is our closest connection to time. It's actually the truest time. The truest time is the here and now. And this, I wanted to bring up this question because there are techniques that I've been using for decades in energy healing to help people overcome their imbalances. And I wanted to offer these to you because they're not that hard to grasp. And so we can do them. We can do this stuff. I was mentioning that all the different epochs of time have their own little energy signature or flavor. When we think of the roaring 20s, right, and life is all like footloose and fancy free, I mean, I think that saying came from the 20s. Did it? Did the saying footloose and fancy free come from the 20s? Oh, That's okay. You weren't born.
I wasn't born until 1927.
Okay, but they're thanks. But anyway,
That's when beads were popular.
yeah, beads were popular. I mean, we think of the 1920s, there was just this lightness. There's this lightness and expansion that was going on in the collective consciousness, and a lot of just freedom and happiness. People were enjoying their comfort. And then the fall at the end of the 1920s came in, and then we went into the whole Bolshevik revolution and this World War II. And that period in the 1930s and 40s had a completely different feel to it worldwide than the feeling in the 1920s. And it's really dramatic and really dynamic. We can see the difference. So the now moment, this moment, has its own unique feel to it, right? It has the beauty of the present moment that we experience is that all the virtual threads that connect us to the past and future have collapsed down and solidified into this moment. And it's a very powerful process. That process, we take it for granted, right? Like we're always in the now moment, so like who thinks about it? But the reality is that being able to comprehend all the virtual threads from the past and future and then solidify them into something solid, that mechanic is the mechanic for manifestation. Like right in that one thing, we have the seed, or we have the key to all manifestation is contained there, and we experience it in our lifetimes as human beings over and over and over and over and over again. So it means that we really have the key to manifesting anything right in our hands. We have it right here. So how do we use this key to help work with the concept of time? We have to take it one step at a time. So no pun intended. And so every moment, whether we think of it as the past or we think of it as the future, contains some semblance of the energy signature of this collapsing of all virtual possibilities into a single presented form. Every moment has it. Even if we think, well, me when I was a teenager, at this point, that's kind of a virtual me because it's not the me of today. Or me a million years from now is kind of a virtual me because it's not the me of today. But even those me's, even those have those past moments, whatever their flavor is, contain some piece of the now experience because they were a now at one point, or they will be a now at some point in the future. And so this mechanic that allows all virtual possibilities to contract down and to become a solid manifest form, that mechanic is present in all points along the continuum of time. And it's through that, the energy signature of that mechanic, that we can access all those other moments in time. Of course, this opens a bit of a nest of, paradoxes and so forth, because, of course, those who've been thinking about time over the long course know that that means that the further away we get from the present moment, the more virtual possibilities there are, or are likely, let's say are likely. So 2 seconds from now, the likelihood of me being in Columbus, Ohio is very slight. But I mean, maybe, but probably not. Oh, look, not. Anyway, but so it means that there are certain possibilities are the closer we are, if we're within 2 seconds or 2 minutes or 5 minutes or a day or something, there are fewer threads of virtual reality that we're drawing upon. And the further we get away, the more range the more like branches out like a tree, right? Or like rivers coming down into a delta, and the river comes down and then it spreads out like that. Same with the past. Now, the threads to the past are locked in by these feeling signatures. And so we hold, for the most part, we hold a general sense of a kind of a single trunk of the tree, so to say, into the past. And yet, the important thing regarding energy healing, because we can access all those past moments through the present, the energy signature of the present now, is that the events of the past that left some kind of scarring or trauma impressions, that gave rise to the development of habits which are not supportive of evolution, or beliefs which are not really aligned with cosmic truth. These can be manipulated. These can be changed, and changing them makes huge differences. It's so liberating for the healing process. In the past, as a general rule, the seeds of illness in the present are locked into moments of the past. And so when we are scanning, say there's a symptom on the surface, and we're scanning to find out, well, where's the seed of this symptom? The symptom will have an energy signature. It always has an energy signature. It has a feel to it, like the feel that goes along with a virus that infects the sinuses and the respiratory system. It has a very exploitative energy signature to it. In fact, most viruses and bacteria, parasites, naturally have very exploitative energy signatures. So you pick up that exploitative feel that's in that symptom, and then you follow it through all the nows. It hits all these nows through the lineage, or through the line of time, and there are energy signatures contained at all the different nows, and it's possible to go back and pluck out the energy signature that is associated with the seed of that illness. Sometimes the energy signature is found within this human lifetime, and sometimes it's found way earlier. When it's found way earlier, you have to ask two things. Is there an energy signature of ancestors? In other words, is it earlier because it was carried down through the generations? Or is it an energy signature associated with just the past history of this physiology, or past history of collective physiology? If the seed is associated with ancestors, there will be a blind spot. Always there's a blind spot. Why? Because when the ancestors experience some kind of trauma or discord, that is strong enough to pass from generation to generation, it creates an epigenetic change in their physiologies. And these epigenetic changes that are associated with problems are the byproduct of proteins which bind to the DNA. They're called morphogroups. They like close off. They're like little on and off signal switches, and they'll go and close off a piece of the DNA. And then once that's been closed off, it gets passed genetically from one generation to the next. So the blind spot is the indicator. It's the signal. And we know what a blind spot feels like. It's like you've got all these feels, right? You've got the symptom on the surface, and there's a thread at the astral level of being which connects the symptom and the feel of the symptom on the surface with the past. And you can just follow that little thread back to the past awareness. It's like rides on the thread to that point where the imbalance began, where the seed was laid in. Some trauma, sometimes it can be either a trauma, or it can be something like a vow or a promise, where but usually a vow or a promise evolves from a traumatic experience, or from an experience that leaves a deep impression on the soul. That's really common. So I feel as if I've been chattering along quite a bit here, and we really need to do some healings. But what I think I'd like to do is I'd like to focus on enhancing and supporting everybody's ability to pick up the details of the mechanics of the present moment, of the present now, to pick up these mechanics, and then become very, very familiar with them and be able to identify them through time in the past. I've talked a lot about the past because that has to do with finding the root cause of the illness. The future has to do with finding the root cause of the cure. So I guess I should talk a little bit about that also. Oh, of course, because I'm saying, oh, we need to do some energy healing. We need to upgrade everybody's ability to understand the mechanics of now, and then to utilize the way consciousness moves at the astral level of the physiology in order to access wherever the seed of the illness is. So we use the future to do that. So in the future, you can imagine it's like a tree-like shape that opens up in front of you, where for the immediate future, there's just one branch, and then that could bifurcate into more branches, and the further you go out, the more branches, the more possible futures there are. Of these futures, the one you will end up at is the one which is determined by your present moment alignment with your essential truth, with cosmic intention for evolution everywhere, with the source of creation. The better we are aligned right now, the more of a likelihood the virtual future, which is going to support highest evolution, will be the most likely future. So we're dealing with virtual possibilities, and how do we align ourselves right now so that that happens? And I'm asking even more specifically, how do we align ourselves right now to pick up that future reality, which will influence the present moment? Because it really all exists at the same time, right? But we experience it linearly. But because we experience it linearly, we have some autonomy over it. This is the wild thing about, as we're going into these very deep levels of consciousness, it transcends logic. I was saying that we get into paradoxes, right? When we start looking at the past and the future. Well, yes. And the beauty of paradoxes is that anytime you have a paradox, it means that there is a vast potential right on that spot for the expansion of some whole new understanding of reality and some whole new direction for consciousness to evolve. So, what I'm doing, I'm giving you my inner mechanics. I'm holding my understanding of this energy signature of the present moment, and then awareness falls into the silence of being. That's all. I'm just kind of presenting it. And as I do that, that presentation activates a connection between wholeness and the understanding of the mechanics of the present moment. Two things happen. One is doing a process like that enlivens, like it warms up and it nourishes the laws of nature, which are responsible for the collapse of all the virtual possibilities into the present. And it's a little bit like a love relationship or something. It really is tender, that our relationship with anything upon which our attention falls, when the attention falls there, when it goes there with that sort of purity of the source of creation energy, it's very intimate. It's very pure. There's no hiding. There's no chance for putting up shielding or manipulating the truth. It's just pure truth that comes through. So because of that, it's a very intimate relationship. It's very, very sweet. And it touches the being, touches the physiology at a very deep level, awakening those mechanics within the physiology, awakening the mechanics within the physiology at a very visceral level. So our bodies, what we're doing is we send our attention there to the collapse of all the virtual to the present now, and then drop into the absolute. And the response back is this deep, intimate relationship, which goes right into the physical form and upgrades the physical form first, because our bodies are used to processing vast amounts of information every second. By the time the information from the body gets up to the brain, it's gone through lots of filters. And so we just think one thought at a time. But when it first comes in, it comes in physically. So everybody can just take a moment, just scan the physiology and feel, especially, I feel, telling you what my scan is, that I feel as if this, it's like a download of information is coming into the body and it's activating the whole chakra system. But I'm especially feeling some, for my physiology, some balancing in the first chakra area, which is good, because any area that's a little bit more out of balance is going to be the one which will receive the most transformation and healing, the most support. Mm-hmm. 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 So when we feel those little shifts of enlivenment or activation of the energy, which is this sort of intimate connection to the mechanics which collapse virtual into a wholeness, or virtual into a present expression, that energy supports the releasing from the physiology of any imbalances that, oh, look, other people are experiencing that too. Yay. So proud of you guys. We're doing it. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Beautiful. Sloughing off of any structures that are held in the physiology. And these I was just listing a few minutes ago, impressions, beliefs, right? Any of the elements that corrupt time or corrupt the flow, the timelines. So these start to wash out of the system. And also, as they're washing out, there's a, oh, sorry. Okay, good. As these wash out, as the corrupt, the elements like impressions, I'm repeating for the person who lost time, sound, impressions and beliefs, etc., as they wash out of the system, that washes out that which corrupts the timelines. And as that happens, it supports physiologically and in our nervous systems the ability for us to hold a closer alignment with totality, with wholeness, with the source of creation, so that spontaneously we are lining ourselves up with that virtual future, which holds them experiences, our experiences that will be collapsing, and as the virtuals collapse into the future times, moments of now, that will hold those collapses which best support the ability for us to know the mechanics of how that collapse happens. And when we're aligned with our future self that knows really, really quickly and efficiently and completely all those mechanics and laws of nature of how time, virtual time, collapses into present time, then that reflects back onto the present now. Why? Because we're sowing the seed of it now. In the now, we sow the seed of that future. This is what we're doing in our energy healing circle right now. This is what we're doing. So we can affect or influence the present moment. And this download is still coming. It's kind of pouring into our healing collective. All the mechanics and all the understanding of how virtual reality, of how consciousness in its unmanifest form collapses down to create a fully manifest expression or experience. I thought this energy healing session was going to be about time, and it's like it seems to be about manifestation, but obviously there is a nice relationship between time and manifested form. Because this is how we measure, and this is what I was talking about in yesterday's session. One of the way we measure time is based on the relationships of forms to each other as they move, like the movement of the Earth around its axis. Axis? Yes. The spinning of the Earth on its axis is the fundamental for how we measure a day. And the movement of the Earth around the sun is the fundamental for how we measure a year. And the speed of light through the universe is how we measure light years. And these are really more related to the speed by which objects interact with each other. It has to do with space, actually, how the objects interact with each other. So how we interact with our future self. There are, if you go out far enough, there are as well as infinite possible future selves. But as we align in the present moment with wholeness, then we cut down the virtual possibilities for the future and are left with this golden package of the virtual futures of self, which are truly, truly reflective of the intentions of the Creator, truly reflective of our full potential, and allow us. And that's another one. And that I can see it happening already in the group. You guys are fast. So I can see already the God presence and the higher, the eternal self of everyone going, oh, full potential. We can do that with full potential as well. Yes, we can. We take the energy signature of my full potential, whatever that energy signature is to you, right? And drop awareness into the source of creation. And with that, an adjustment we drop into the source of creation. That's the tide going out, right, to wholeness. The whole causal body feels itself as wholeness. Because of the energy signature, as the tide comes back in, it brings into focus those regions of the causal body which best align with your fullest potential, your highest potential. These become the ones in focus. And that was another thing we talked about yesterday, is how, because the causal field is vast, it's as big as the universe, and through space and time as big as it gets, we only hold in the center of our focus certain regions of the causal field, which we have pre-selected before we were born, or which we have evolved in this lifetime. Sometimes decisions we make during a lifetime, shifts, you're working with a certain set of basic regions of the causal field, and then you're like, oh, this one isn't serving me, out it goes, new one in, like that. It feels as if, at this part in the healing, as if the heart is kind of massaging the whole system, the whole process. And there's definitely an expansion of heart going on, along with the integration of understanding of what we are actually doing energetically at this time. The expansion of the heart and the expansion of consciousness allows you to bring more regions of the causal field into the center focus area. And anyway, I talked quite a bit more about that last night, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, because I love you and I want to keep moving forward. But you can look more at that, and you can also look on my website in the knowledge base under causal body. I think there should be some more support material there, because I know that's an abstract concept. That's the finest manifest level of self. If this is pure unmanifest being, then the first layer of manifestation, I'm using the word causal to describe. All right, let's go to the next question. Could you please comment on poetry, music, painting, etc., the arts, and how they can take us out of linear time and into more wholeness of time? It's a beautiful question. All the arts have this. It's a beautiful time to go to this question, I see too, because all the arts have an ability to both leverage the heart's wisdom and expand the heart's wisdom. Evolution of consciousness doesn't just it can happen kind of systemically, where the whole system kind of, the most abstract level of consciousness at the causal level, there's a big expansion there. But evolution of consciousness can also happen in specific areas. For example, it's possible, I've used this example before, those of you who are familiar with those who meditate, the experience of having both the silence of being and thoughts at the same time. Or you can have the mantra and thoughts at the same time, right? Everybody's had that experience, mantra and thoughts, or silence of consciousness and thoughts at some point or another. And this is an experience where part of the nervous system is anchored into the source of creation, and another part of the nervous system is releasing some imbalance or impurity. So what that means is there's expansion in one part, and there's a lot of activity and dynamism in the other part, and boundaries and limitations. So that's a possibility. That's we're wired up that way, that we can expand systemically, or parts can expand. With the arts appeal to the different channels of perception in order to cause expansion in those channels. People tend to be attracted to the arts, which, this will give me an opportunity to speak about poetry too, which I love. So people are attracted to different channels of artistic expression based on the area that their soul or their physiology is looking to expand or looking to refine perception in that area. For example, music is based on sense of sound, and that's space. And one of the things that musicians have to do is they have to memorize. And memorization has to do with time, right? And we talked about the connection between time and space. If you paint a painting, you don't really have to memorize your painting. It's done, it's painted, it's finished. But if you play a song, as soon as it's over, it's gone. And then if you want to play it again, you have to like remember what you played and play it again. And dance is the same way, of course, because once the move has been done, then it's over. Then if I want to do it again, I have to do it again. So the different forms they combine different elements of our 5 elements. The reason I said I was excited to talk about poetry and writing is that we have the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and space. And then we have subtler forms of expression of consciousness, mind, intellect, and ego. And these 3, mind, intellect, and ego, with the 5 elements, make up the 8 prakritis, or the 8 layers of nature's expression, we can say. There's 8 layers of nature's, from most dense at earth all the way down to ego is the most subtle. Poetry and writing go right into the mind, intellect, ego level of self for the sake of expression. And yesterday when I was talking about the dimensions, 3rd dimension, 4th dimension, 5th dimension, that the earth is going onto, and so how the tide goes in and it finds parts, and then it goes back out to wholeness like that. It goes first to 3 parts, but then from there you can get any numbers, but there are kind of main numbers that nature likes, their main frequencies or groupings that nature likes. And one of those is the 8 prakritis, the 8 fundamentals of nature's expression. So these subtle, the mind and the intellect and the ego. Now, of course, for all the arts, in order to become proficient and in order to create art which really speaks to the soul of humanity, it's necessary for the artist to have their own experience of profound awareness or subtle awareness. This is why in all the arts, we start out by learning the basic moves, like centering clay on a wheel. The teacher says you have to push with your muscles of your hand and like that. But then after a while, having done it so many times, the muscle memory gets locked into the body. Where to find the different notes on the instrument. The muscle memory gets locked into the body. And then the mind is free to transcend while the action is taking place on the surface of the physiology. At that point, the mind, the awareness, isn't so much on, oh, how do I make a B flat on this instrument? It doesn't have to think that. Instead, it just knows the B flat and the awareness settles down to the essence of what is that B flat, the energy signature of the B flat, the energy signature of the B flat mixed with the D, mixed with the E flat, right? There's these relationships between the notes are so luscious, they're so yummy. And so as the awareness goes down to that level where it's starting to really appreciate the essence of the consciousness that's contained within these forms of natural forms of creation, that's when we meet, so to say, the muse. That's when we meet the muse. That's when we shake hands with the overarching intelligence for that particular art form. I'm understanding something having to do with time. Different art. I remember how I said, like, when you make a piece of music, you make it and whoop, it just kind of goes out to the cosmos and then it's gone, unless you make do the same song again, and you never do it same way twice. So some art forms are not like that. Some art forms, like ceramics, for example, if you create a high fire piece of pottery, this is a low fire piece of pottery, but if you create a high fire piece of pottery, it can last, if it's not broken, it can last 4,000 years. Low fire, not so much. Maybe, I don't know how many for low fire, 2,000 something? Or a painting, the average painting lasts only so long. But the writings, if they're etched into stone, they last a long time. We have written records that go back on our earth a long, long time. We have a very early musical instrument that goes back, I think, 30,000 years. And where the holes in that instrument were placed, what allows us to know what the scale of the instrument is and to hear what people heard 30,000 years ago. So there are aspects. The closer we get, the more gross it is. The clay is like earth. We're mostly working with earth. We're really working with all 5 elements to make the pot. But once the pot is made, it's earth with a space inside. But the other art forms, as you go to subtler and subtler art forms, we get to art forms that allow, especially with the writing, that have the potential to last an exceedingly long time. I am being encouraged to offer the piece of information to everyone that the stones hold a lot of memories. The water holds memory in a particular way, but the stones hold memory in another way. They hold memory in another way. And so the stones would like me to say that it's good to know that each one of them is like a little archive of what was happening on the earth and with experience of consciousness at the time of its formation. And some of the best stones, the most amazing stones, are igneous rock, which rise up to the surface very quickly, and they capture the story of the moment in the spaces. Igneous rock is often very porous. So it is the spaces in the igneous rock that is the place where the memory of time is held or captured. So if you go somewhere like the Great Lava Fields of California or something, you're actually going to a vast archive of deep memory of the truth of what was happening on our earth at that time, that was so important to the earth that earth felt it necessary to keep a record, to like, oh, we need to copy that. Oh, look, something just came up on YouTube. Quick, before it's taken off of YouTube, get a screenshot of that, like that. So yeah, the earth, beautiful. All right, another question is in here. So I'm mostly just working questions today, but luckily we got to talk a little bit about, actually, before I do this, I need to do one more thing, and that is, oh, beautiful. I'm just checking up a little bit on some of the comments, and oh, So one lady's saying that has to do with art. Art is also the glue that connects the artist to herself, yes, as well as to the collective, yes. So beautiful, Dorothy. So this lady's comment, it's a beautiful comment from California, is that, yes, it's the connection to the part of self that is your true progression forward to your highest expression. And the reason that some artists like become famous and other artists not so famous, or that some people's artwork is embraced by the collective, that would be the word. Some people's art is embraced by the collective, because sometimes they're not famous during their lifetime, right? But then afterwards they're like, oh my goodness, this person was great, is because that individual who's able to reach into the subtle levels of their awareness and pluck out the essence of their trajectory into the future timeline, which is best aligned with everyone's highest potential. That artist who can express that will express something that resonates with everyone, because whether people admit it or not, or it doesn't matter what kind of vows or promises or self-sabotage they have going on, they're at some deep level of being. Everyone truly desires to grow into an expression of themselves, which is as perfect a reflection of divine truth as possible. So to whatever degree the artist is able to do that within themselves and then give expression to it in their art, the art becomes the vehicle that, yes, connects them to the collective consciousness and elicits a response from the collective consciousness of excitement and joy and recognition, right? Because somewhere deep in everyone's heart, no matter how covered up it is with like shielding or something, you know, and I'm talking to some of my folks in Europe and different people that I love so much, but I know that we're all kind of grappling with like, how do we unloosen our own potential to like really be living at a level that's really high. And so when it's covered up with shielding, underneath the shielding is the home of that essential truth. It's held in a place of purity, and it's not lost no matter how much shielding is on top of it. So if the artist can penetrate down to that place inside of them and bring the art up through the layers where the shielding is and show it, then when people look at the art, they're like, oh, that person spoke my soul. I see my soul on that canvas, or I feel the essence of my being in the waves of that music. It's very beautiful. Artists, yes, yes. So it's all about, and what we're doing in that last exercise we did on time to kind of filter out the timelines that aren't useful or that aren't efficient or that take us into places that wouldn't be aligned with cosmic evolution. By doing that, we're really placing ourselves in a position where whatever we create is going to have more of that effect on the collective. Okay, I love you. I love that point. Thank you. I'm going to go to this next question. I wonder if we could do a healing to manage better the available amount of time. Oh, yes, that's practical. Yeah, this is from a mom, right? She's like, she gets it. She says, I have a problem to manage the available amount of time. Often I have to rush, and often I'm too slow, or it seems there's not enough time to enjoy. You know, things move so fast, and the months and years pass so quickly, too quickly. And even often in the evening hours, I feel like I'm missing an hour, like it's just disappeared. An hour is gone in a second without anything happening. Actually, no, that's not from a mom. The next one's from a mom. Sorry, but that's a very sweet lady who deserves to have her question answered. So yes. Prioritization is the key. Prioritization is the key. And one of the big blockages, which recently came to my awareness, which I am so grateful to share with you guys, is that we often measure our success on the degree to which our actions were able to satisfy the expectations of others. Yes, perhaps I should say that one more time. we tend, this is a collective problem. Everybody does it. Everybody in society does it. We tend to measure our success based on our perception of how well our actions satisfied the expectations of others. Now, I mean, that has a lot to do with like trying to get to a certain place at a certain time because you're going to meet somebody. Yeah, see, raised hands over there. Thank you guys for validating. Not a coincidence I'm stopping to take a drink of water because most people do put the priority, that is a very high priority. How well am I fulfilling what other people expect me to do, or how well am I living up to the vision that I have collected through other people's impression of me, through my environment, their perception of my full potential. You know, how well am I living up to that vision? And there's only one relationship. There's only really one relationship, and that's the relationship between ourselves as an individual and ourselves as the wholeness of creation. That's the one relation. That's the one that we want to live up to. That's the relationship we want to live up to. All the other relationships they pale in the light of that relationship. And in that relationship, sometimes the measure of success is not what we expect. Oh, almost all the times, the measure of success is not what we expect. Why? Because our relationship with our own totality is a relationship completely oriented towards our evolution. That means expansion. That means expansion of our own expectations on ourselves and expansion of everything. So what we can do is when we shift, we shift our priorities. We're doing so at the astral level. The astral level is providing the scaffolding. Here on our diagram, the finger diagram, the astral level is here. It's part of the collective field and the web of life and the collective level of self. And so at that level, I'm just checking into the astral bodies for everybody here and how we connect in with the whole astral field. And remember, yesterday, there was the new detail for the model of the astral body, that there are some threads in the astral body which have a direct link to source of creation, where others kind of wander around, and there is the direct link threads in the astral field and the astral body are they create points of reference for all the other threads in the astral field, and they help create orderliness in the astral field. So what happens is sometimes priorities are built off of threads in the astral field which are not those anchoring threads. And when they get built off of the threads that are not anchors to being, then it can lead us off into some tangent or some side project, which wasn't really the main reason that we came here to live this life. And that stops us from being as efficient with our time as we could. One of the big surprises that I got when I had this realization, by the way, just saying, and it was connected to a really huge healing I'd been suffering with. I suffer from stuff sometimes. You know, I went through, during this last summer, remember the planets were crazy and there were a lot of heavy planetary influences and so forth. So I was having a physical experience that was very uncomfortable, and I'd had it for like maybe 3 months, about 3 months. And then I had this realization that in a particular relationship, I was living my life in order to satisfy the expectations of another person. And that I was measuring the success of the relationship on my ability to come up to the other person's expectation on me. And when I decided that success in that relationship had nothing to do with the way things ended up turning out on the surface, come what may, but it had to do with my ability to navigate the relationship while being true to my own heart and my own truth. And this imbalance that I was dealing with went away instantly. And I mean, I'd been, home remedies and herbs and all kinds of stuff, and it wasn't doing it. And it went away instantly. And I was like, wow, how did that happen? But I mean, it was like I knew, and I had been looking for the inner thread, but it took sitting down with my sweetheart and talking it through. That wasn't my relationship with him. That's a very sweet relationship. But the point is that it took somebody to bounce my experience off of, because I'd been working on it internally, and I was kind of caught in my own field of it, and I wasn't able to go outside the box enough. And when I sat down and talked to somebody else that I trusted and loved and who I knew would shoot me straight, then I was able to come to this conclusion. When it came to the conclusion, instantly the symptoms just left the body. It was amazing. It was amazing. So healings can happen like that. And if they don't happen like that, it means that we have to look deeper. True to your own self. In other words, success in any given situation is based on the fact that when you finished your activity, you look back and say, I was as close to being as I could be in that situation. I held my own essential truth. I honored it, and I held it in a sacred position in myself, and I did what was right for me that I needed to do in that situation. I think a lot of us women end up in those situations where the desire to serve others and the desire to support everyone feeling happy and not being upset and things like that, that desire is so strong that we're often willing to self-sacrifice. So if we cut out all the places in the day where we're self-sacrificing by realigning, and now I'm checking in with everybody's astral bodies, so checking in on those threads and making sure that the prioritization schedule or the system of prioritization is aligned with those mother threads in the astral body, which are your connection with being. And it could be even in bigger things, there could be bigger things where there's significant relationships or something that you feel like, gosh, I'm letting that person down. Yeah, well, if doing something that hurts you is outside the range of your priorities, then you won't do it. Even if someone says, oh, now you've hurt me because you didn't do what I expected you. Doesn't matter. It's okay, they have to deal with that. Because if you set boundaries and limitations for yourself that are right for you, truly right for you, it will initiate situations for others where they grow, where they evolve, and where as they evolve through that, even like maybe they're expecting you to uphold something for them and then you didn't, then that means that they have to find another way to uphold that. And when they find another way to uphold that, they grow. And they ultimately will be happier because they will be stronger and more efficient, self-sufficient, etc. Otherwise, we're wasting our time enabling others. Thank you, guys. Here's another one. I was listening. Those are aligned, I'm asking being. Everybody's aligned, everybody's priorities are aligned with their highest development. Yeah, just checking. There's no other threads. Okay. Might go back and check again once or twice just to see. Sometimes sometimes they're habits. We have habits stuck in there. We have little loops that we're used to. So we're having to clear some habits and impressions and pain bodies. Sorry, these are all clearing from thought I was done with that one. Clearing from the astral body. Habits, impressions, pain bodies, sanskaras. Clearing from the space between the solar plexus and the heart also. Impressions, pain bodies, and attachments. What did I say? Also attachments are clearing from there. Attachments. Beliefs are clearing. The belief that if I don't do what other people expect me to do, I won't be loved. That's not true. That's not true. It's amazing how disagreeable you can be and people will still love you. We think, oh, only if I'm really nice, right? People will love me. No, that's not true at all. I have the most disagreeable sons. Oh, I love them so much. I can't love them less. And they're so disagreeable. And it's just absolutely the best. Because their disagreeableness forces me to evolve. If I say, it's like this, they say, no, it's not, Mom. Then I have to I've got to go back. really, because they're smarty pants. They're smarter than I am. So then I have to go back and I have to look again. I have to look deeper. And when I look deeper, gems and jewels come out. Because when you die, it's like mining, right? We're mining into the field of consciousness. We look deep, such beauty comes out. And this again is related to the arts, right? That what the arts do when people become very proficient is they become used to mining deep into their own being and finding those precious gems, those little nuances of experience, those fleeting little nuances of experience, that they can pick them up and then they can hold them tenderly until, like a seed, until it's ready to kind of sprout up to the surface and become an expression. So they make me do that, and they do it with their disagreeableness. It's hilarious. We have these hilarious conversations. But anyway, okay, so good. Good thing intuition was go back and double check. So I'm glad I did. Okay, I was listening to one video where one being that called themselves as collective were telling that they support us for our evolution and awakening, are all beings like angels, ascended masters, gods, who support our highest evolution, our highest self in the now. Yes, yes, all are accessible, but the range of accessibility is a byproduct of, it's essentially a byproduct of the alignment of the astral body and those beliefs that we were just talking, beliefs and priorities. So all of us are, oh, another sip of water maybe. All of us are anchored to being. All of us are the antennas that are coming off the wholeness of totality. And the wholeness of totality has many antennas. But so all those larger forms of self or larger forms of expression of being are contained within us as at the subtle levels of ourself. But it's like the art form. It's like the art form that when a person has been doing the art form enough, I play musical instruments, and when I see little black dots on a piece of paper, I hear music. I look at the black dot and I know what that black dot's supposed to represent and sound like. Now, if you don't know how to read music, you look at the black dot, it doesn't mean anything. It's just gobbledygook. But there are connections over the time. I made all these connections. So I see the black dot, I know what it sounds like, I know the finger position, and that process is ultra fast, ultra fast. Okay, so the arts are like that we do the process over and over again so many times that we become, the mind is able, the awareness is able to settle down to a very subtle level of experience of self, even while reading the black dots on the page and making the finger positions and the lip positions. So there is an integrative process necessary to gain full access to the subtler forms of creation, which are our self. They are those regions of the causal field. They are these humming, scintillating areas of the ocean, which is the causal body, which when we bring them into our focus, we have access to them. And I love this question coming in near the end of the webinar, because yesterday I made reference to a form of Shiva known as Lord Kalabhairava, which according to Vedic tradition is the overseeing deity of time. That's a region of the causal field, folks. And one of the things, if we leave this webinar with anything, I would love it for each of us to leave with a very clear, thank you, clear, I was going to say concrete, but it can't be concrete, but a very clear, it could be concrete, but mostly clear understanding, a sense, a very clear sense of what that is. And we can use a word like Kalabhairava, and we can animate it, and you can go online and look up Lord Kalabhairava and see pictures of this guy, you know, with dark skin or whatever. But the important thing is the reason that religions will animate these causal forms, like they make them into pictures of angels and ascended masters and so, is to help us. It's like a learning tool. It helps us access that energy within our own consciousness. It helps us access it. It's a learning tool, though. It's very important not to get lost on the object, right? Not to get lost on the path. It's only a path. The path to the experience is only a path. Don't get lost on the path. So, to quote my friend Ellen, and so, yeah, the sense of time. And yesterday we did this part of this exercise where awareness settled down. It dived into the essence of time. What is that essence of time? Deep, deep as awareness settles down. Just letting awareness settle down into what is the essence of time. It is vast. It is orderly. It has an erosive quality. It interfaces with the elements, especially space, especially space. Ooh, it interfaces with the mind, intellect, and ego too. It's held in all the spaces of the body. And here we're doing a scan, all the spaces, the ears, the nose, the mouth, but also like between the joints. It's held in the spaces between cells, even between the synapses of nerves. And in these spaces, this is the healing for the spaces in the body. The intimacy and the sweetness of our relationship with the field of self, which is time, is able to hold sacred the divine blueprint of our bodies in those spaces. It's able to hold sacred. So the divine blueprint, the intention of the Creator for making us, the intention of our own big eternal self for making us, that intention contains the ideal structure of the physiology. That means ultra healthy joints, right? That means really good hearing, really good senses of perception. That means blessings on the vocal mechanism, because the vocal mechanism uses space and vibration in space to function. It feels like there's some bliss that's coming, it's creeping into the intimate relationship between ourselves and the aspect of our own causal body, which is the essence of time. And this principle of this sort of loop of self-love is really important in energy healing. You can love, you can direct love into any part of the physiology that is struggling in any way. We can direct our loving attention into those areas. And as we do that, it acts as a balm. Our love is like a light medicine for those parts of the body. So we can do it with concrete, like at one point I broke this wrist really badly. So sometimes I go like this. It doesn't hurt anymore, of course, and there's no more metal in there. But it's good when I send love to those bones. It makes them more robust. It makes them stronger, harder. It makes them stronger and harder. So we can also do that with subtle structures of our body. And the subtle structures of our body include the regions of the causal field, such as angels and ascended masters and gods and all that. And we can think of them as animate. And sometimes I think for people it's easier to send or give your love to those forms if you're thinking of them as animate. If some artist in the past did some nice painting of Mother Lakshmi or some Archangel Raphael or somebody like that. And you can look at the picture and go, oh, yes, like you're looking at a picture of your child. Oh, I love that person. But remember not to get lost on the path. That when we're directing our love into that image, what we're really doing is we're going past the image and into the essence of what that thing actually represents, which is it represents a particular arrangement or order in our causal bodies, which aligns with that virtual future of self that allows fullest expression of our potential. So the information comes in as a download. The process, the function of moving from the denser conception of what the thing is down to its subtlest expression. Down to its subtlest expression in the absolute. And then how to flag. And yesterday we did a great healing for like flagging or being able to identify particular subtle expressions. And I woke up this morning and my visual field was just bursting with concrete, like actually if I could take a photograph of it, like that kind of concrete of all sorts of subtle forms throughout this whole field. It was so beautiful, still. So the work that we did after integrated at night came out more concrete, and it will for you too. For everybody who's here from Europe, God bless the Europeans for being with us too, and other places, Bali and other places around the world. You know, after you go through the night's sleep, you will find that all this work is more integrated. And I hope you have an incredible time watching the video from yesterday, because there was some really interesting energy healing work that came out. It was kind of like a great big healing across the span of the entire session. And thank you, all of you for being with me. The scholars and the teachers and the Jyotishis and the moms and dads and everyone who has a real, a sincere interest in expanding their consciousness and understanding energy healing. All of you wouldn't be here if you didn't have that. And that itself is so rare and it's so precious. I bow down to all of you with a heart full of gratitude. Thank you for being with me. And I look forward to seeing everyone again. Oh, thank you. An announcement. Starting next webinar, we will be starting the Friday webinar 1/2 hour earlier. Thank you for reminding me. Yes. And we're doing that for our dear friends on the East Coast who like to go to bed at a more decent hour, and for those of us everywhere else who want to have that a little extra time. So yes, thank you everyone for being with me. See you next time.